Today I'll be talking Wheel of Time predictions, where I think they're going with the TV show based on what we've seen so far, and how this is going to be different from the books. So there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this. I'm going to be talking about a lot of events in the book, including how things end for various characters. So this will very likely ruin the book and the TV series if you haven't already read the books. So I highly recommend, if you haven't read the series yet, don't watch the rest of this video. And I'll be talking mainly about characters, in particular characters who I think may be merged or removed, and how this will affect the storyline, or what this could suggest about storylines from the books that are going to be removed in the TV series. So first we'll look at Liandrin. So Liandrin is a Red Archer sister who we know was involved in the Vileness, which was the gentling of men who could channel without trial. And we hear from Alana that she's gaining support against Xuan in the tower, and we know that she's roughly political equal of Moiraine, Kerene, and other Aes Sedai of that power level. So I think we should start to think of Liandrin as actually Elaida, the character from the books. So I don't actually think that they've removed Elaida from the TV series. I think that they've removed Liandrin in terms of what the characters do in the book, and they've replaced Elaida's name with Liandrin. So this would be what I kind of call the Osha effect that we saw in Game of Thrones, where in the book you have the wildling Osha and Asha Greyjoy, and they've changed the name of Asha in the TV series to Yara just to try and avoid confusion with other characters. I think this is probably the case with Elaida, that because it's similar to names such as Elaine, they've decided to call her Liandrin, but effectively the character will still be Elaida. And if you ignore the hair and look at the other physical descriptions of the characters, Liandrin's described as pretty and doll-like, while Elaida is described as handsome and severe-looking. And I know which of these two I'd pick to describe the character we've seen so far. She's also behaving a lot more like Elaida than Liandrin, in my opinion. We saw in the scene where she and Moiraine were attempting to shield Logain that she was overdrawing the power, risking burning out, which really isn't something that I'd expect from someone as self-serving as Liandrin in the books, or really any member of the Black Archer. It was much more of an Elaida type behaviour, to be willing to risk everything basically on vengeance. So if we look at the core features of the characters in the books, they're actually quite similar. Liandrin is Red Archer, who is actually Black Archer, and she ends up in the end either Darkovale or Damane. It doesn't really say what happens to her after Siroth's defeat, whereas Elaida is Red Archer. She isn't Black Archer, but she's manipulated by the Black Archer, and also even before she's being manipulated, her leadership as Amyrlin is basically exactly what the Shadow could have wanted anyway, just because she's so incompetent. And she ends up as Damane as well after the Seanchan attack. So the main effect of this merger of Liandrin into Elaida would be on the Chasing the Black Archer plot from the book, which honestly I don't think would be a big deal to remove entirely from the TV show. This is a very slow plot line. There's a lot of braid tugging, a lot of monologues. I think it's a major contributor to the slow pace in the middle books, and you're left kind of just reading it for the sake of wanting to get to the next Mat chapter. And I also think for the most part this plot doesn't really do any favours to the characters involved either. I think it would be possible to get them to the places they need to be, and to still have things like the Bowl of the Winds plot without having this whole Chasing the Black Archer thing there. It goes nowhere, like it has no real effect on the plot in the end. They stop the Black Sisters from getting the Mail Adam from Tanchico, but then Semiraj ends up with it anyway. And this group of Black Sisters are kind of always around, but never really impacting any events in a significant way. So I think it would be quite easy to remove them from the show, to trim a lot of the fat from the book story without impacting the main storyline too much. And I think they'd be able to get these characters, Elaine and Nynaeve, more involved in the main plot, and in a way that is of more benefit to their character development as well. So moving on now to some more central characters in The Forsaken. So in the books, these are 13 channelers who served the Dark in the Age of Legends. So there's 8 men and 5 women. We've seen in episode 5, 8 Forsaken presented in the form of statues that Stepan was praying to ward off, and they've shown us 4 men and 4 women. So it's possible that these could just be 8 that are remembered and there are actually still going to be 13. I actually think for some of these type of changes, the show hasn't committed to a decision yet. They're kind of leaving things open that if they want to have all 13, they could, but if they need to trim things back, they have the prospect of doing that as well. So I'm going to look at how they might be planning to trim down 13 Forsaken to 8. And we can get a hint of this by looking at the statues that they showed us in the show. So we first see these 3, who I assume are the 3 who I'd say are arguably the most important in the story. That's Ishamael, Lanfear, and Demandred. There certainly seems to be confirmation that the one on the left is Ishamael. I don't really know what the weird lion mask is, but the way Stepan is talking about Ishamael while gesturing to that statue seems to confirm that. We next see these 2. I think we can presume that the one on the right is Grandel, who I think is a close 4th in importance after the other 3. And then this mysterious character at the back I'll come back to. And then we have these last 3. This short bearded one in the back looks exactly like Samael, so I think we can be pretty confident there. And then these last 2 I think will be some combination or merger of Magadian, Masana, and Semiraj. And I think the easiest way for them to do this would be to merge Magadian and Masana into one character. So if we look at their arcs, they're both involved with the Black Archer. They're tied in with Nynaeve, Elaine, and Egwene, mainly Magadian with Nynaeve and Masana with Egwene. They're both defeated at some point in Teleran Riod, and Masana's ending is kind of anticlimactic. She's kind of in hiding the whole series, and then she appears and she gets defeated almost immediately and she's out of it again. So I think it would be quite easy, particularly with the prospect of removing the Black Sisters arc with Liandrin and co. It would be quite easy to kind of merge Masana's character into Magadian. So we come back to this mysterious figure at the back, the unidentified male Forsaken. So there are 5 male Forsaken left unaccounted for. That's Agenor, Belthamel, Belal, Asmodean, and Raven. And of these 5, Belal, Raven, and Samael all have fairly similar plot lines in that they each take control of one of the nations, end up being invaded and defeated by Rand with the help of other characters. So I think it would be possible to merge the Raven conflict at least with Samael, provided that the key stuff that happens with Matt in that conflict still remains, since that's important to the late stages of the story. And obviously the attack on the Stone of Tear should still be included since it's so important to the prophecy, but I think in this case it could easily just happen with Ishamael there rather than Belal, and the same is true of the events at the Eye of the World with Agenor, Belthamel, and Ishamael all being fought at once. I think it would be kind of clearer to the audience if there's just one main antagonist at each of these stages rather than kind of fighting the Forsaken in succession with Ishamael always reappearing after the other one's defeated. I actually think that Belthamel is more important to the plot in his post-revival form as Arangar or Halima, but they could potentially replace this with one of the other dead Forsaken or with one of the female Forsaken. Asmodean kind of has the most unique storyline of these characters, so maybe we could be seeing Asmodean as the 8th Forsaken. But in that case, I would have liked to have seen an instrument on the statuette that Stepan was praying in front of. So I think they've kind of left it open as to who that 8th Forsaken could be. They don't really have any defining features in the statue, other than the fact that they're bearded, so presumably male. So we could be seeing Belthamel before the disfigurement that happened from being sealed at the top of the boar, or we could be seeing some kind of blended version of a few of the characters, and maybe filling the role of Asmodean in the books. So it's also possible that they could bring Demandred in earlier to fill some of the roles of these other Forsaken, but I hope that they won't do this. I think that the mystery around Demandred in the books was really cool, that we knew he was around but had no idea what he was doing, and it seems like this is something that they're likely to want to maintain in the show given the way they're maintaining the mystery around the Dragon Reborn. They could even start showing the Bow the Wild plot a season or two in advance without revealing to the audience who the character is or what actually is happening with that plot. So there's a few other changes I think we can expect that I wanted to just touch on briefly. Firstly, with Fain. So we've seen him a little bit in episode 5. He's still looking quite jovial, considering what's supposed to have happened to him in Aradhol. And I think maybe he's not been affected by Mashadar yet, and we can expect something big to happen with Fain, Mat, and the dagger, I think in episode 6. We may also see Mat being healed early, since he's already in Tarvalon with the dagger right now. And Mat's illness has been very kind of rapid onset. I think he's looking quite sick already for that to be dragged out for another season and a half. So somewhat related to Fain, I think we can also expect to see some changes in the organisation and some character mergers in the Whitecloaks. Eamon Valda in the books is not a questioner, so I expect that we're probably going to be seeing some of these characters such as Jakim Carradine or Asanawa, who are questioners in the books, merged into Eamon Valda's character. Whether he's going to be an actual dark friend like Carradine or just an asshole kind of remains to be seen. We also haven't seen Baia or Jain Bornhold, the son, yet, so it's possible that these characters will be removed and maybe Joffrey Bornhold will be filling in some of their roles, or potentially even replacing Pedron Neal in the books as the leader of the Whitecloaks. We also had a very interesting name drop of Jane Fastrider in episode 5, suggesting that this character may be gender swapped in the TV show, which is a bit weird, but honestly I don't think it really matters. It's not important to that character that he be male. So the line that I think indicated this was this one from Rand. She thought she was Jane herself reincarnated, and this isn't the pronoun you would use if you were talking about Jane as a man. You would say Jane himself. But we get a very interesting response from Loyal where he laughs and says he thinks it's unlikely and starts saying with all the humans, but gets interrupted and never gets to finish what he's saying. So he might be saying here that Jane Fastrider's still alive, or if we put the Jane herself thing down to a grammatical error in the writing or the delivery, what Loyal could be hinting at here is that humans are never reborn as the opposite gender, which is something that we see in the books, but which it seems like they've changed in the show. So this could be a case of changing not a fact about the Wheel of Time world, but just the knowledge of the human characters in the world, which would make all the people who threw a tantrum about the woke conspiracy ruining the Wheel of Time look pretty stupid, or at least stupider than they already looked. On that note, I've seen quite a few comments from people who are scared that they're going to change who the Dragon Reborn is and make it so that Nynaeve is the dragon. I don't know how many Breitbart articles it takes to get a worldview so warped that you think this is a possibility. I think if you think about it for more than 3 seconds, you can see that they would have to completely rewrite 14 books in order to do this, and they're not going to do that for the sake of some kind of conspiracy theory woke agenda. Like, what are they going to do with Rand's character for the next 14 books if this is the case? If they were going to do something like this in the name of wokeness, they would have just cast Rand as a female. So I think it's quite obvious to anyone not in a right-wing echo chamber that they won't have changed Rand as the Dragon Reborn. We've had casting already of Tigraine, Rand's mother, of a young Shwan. We've seen that there's clips from the Aiel War in Season 1, and there's been these constant hints about Rand's parentage, like the redhead Aiel that Mat and Tom buried, Loyal recognising Rand as Aiel, Rand saying that he's seen Dragonmount before, and so on. And I expect that that big reveal is going to come in episode 6 or 7, possibly starting with a flashback of the Aiel War, going on to Tam finding Rand on the mountainside, and potentially crisscrossing in the present moment with Rand channeling for the first time on screen. For now, that's all the predictions for the future of the TV show that I'm going to cover in this video. I expect some of these things will be a lot clearer after the last few episodes of Season 1. And if you have any other ideas about changes you think they're going to make in the TV show compared to the book, I'd love to hear them in the comments.